Hey y'all. Okay. My little piece isn't working here. My usual intro. Don't know what's happening, but good morning. Yikes. Good morning, 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 good morning. Come on in the room. Good morning. I know what happened. Was cleaning out my storage and I think I eliminated the file that allows that to come up. Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. Come on in, come on in, come on in, come on in. Look what I did. Running, running. Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Come on in to the space. Welcome, 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 welcome. Good morning to you. Good morning to you. Good morning. Good morning, good morning. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Good morning and welcome, 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 welcome to the Pink Robe Chronicles. Oh, wow. I deleted so many of my assets. Okay. Good morning. We're here, though. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Welcome. Welcome to the Pink Robe Chronicles. I am Reverend Dr. Melva L. Sampson, the curator and the creator of this digital Hush Harbor, a spiritual gathering that is rooted in African-centered and womanist tenets and values. Ashe and amen. We welcome you to this radically inclusive, welcoming, and affirming space. And we also welcome those of you who desire to become a part of our subscription community called The Clearing. The Clearing meets directly after Pink Robe Chronicles. We go over to a private Zoom where we talk back to the text and have a more intimate conversation in a quasi-private space. We have a Facebook page that is dedicated also to this talk back. And it is also a way that folks support Pink Robe Chronicles and the offerings that I provide. So I welcome you into that space. I've placed the link to become a part of our subscription community right there in the chat, both on YouTube as well as on Facebook. It says by Stripe. And so even if you are already a member of the clearing and you have to update payment links, so forth and so on, you could go ahead and just subscribe all over again and click that link. Okay. So listen, first of all, shout out, let me show you a little here. You see, I don't have on my pink robe today, but I am representing the Virginia Union University Panthers. Ashe. Yes, yes, yes. We are the CIAA North Division champs, the CIAA champs, period. Virginia Union beat the Fayetteville State University Broncos on yesterday at a score of 21-10, and myself and our daughters were in Salem, Virginia, to witness the takedown. And so shout out to you, Virginia Union, my first alma mater, my first love. Shout out to you. And this should make for those of us, I let my chapter dues lapse. So this is a call for a re-up and a return to and a getting involved and active. So shout out to you, Ashe. Many of us are have come through homecoming, CHBCU homecoming season. And, you know, my voice is still hoarse. I'm still hoarse, still hoarse. So I want to invite you, and that I am a little late, and I'm going to get back on in attempting to be diligent. If I say 8 a.m., I'm going to work really hard to do such. And so I haven't been doing that, and I acknowledge that. But here I am. So I want to invite you to click like and share right now. If you would share or tag folk that you know would normally be on, that you would invite them and let them know that we are indeed here. Good morning, good morning, good morning again. Good morning, good morning. Good morning, good morning, good morning, Cynthia. Good morning, LaWonder. Natasha, I see YouTube is popping this morning to our folks over on YouTube. Good morning. Good morning from all the way from Bahrain. Good morning, Devon. Good morning, Margaretta. Good morning, Tamil. Good morning, Sherry and Dr. Bobby. Hey, how you doing? Good morning, Antoinette. Good morning, Dana and Jonetta. Good morning, Jonetta. It is good to see you. Derek asked about you last week. He was wondering, had we seen you? So good morning. I will tell him that you were here. Good morning, Kim. Good morning, Camille. Good morning. Good morning. Well, listen, let's go forward with our intimate crowd. Good morning, Barbara. Good morning, Irene. Good morning, Chelsea. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, Kaya. Listen, we had a time on yesterday. Good morning, Soror Kaya. It was good to see you on yesterday in Salem, Virginia. Good morning, and thank you for your hospitality to the Sorors of the Roanoke Alumni Chapter. Thank you for the hospitality. Thank you, thank you. Good morning, Dr. Jamie. Good morning, Tracy Lynn. Good morning. Listen, you all, this morning I have more questions than I do answers. Good morning, Natasha Hart. I have more questions than I do have answers. More questions than I have answers. But I wonder if there are any of you that know that questioning is also a kind of spiritual practice. It is a discipline. And so I want to just get into it. I also want to say that this particular meditation is not for. I want to offer a trigger warning. That's what I want to do. A trigger warning in the sense of for those who are big enough, whose britches are big enough to question, that this particular meditation might ruffle some feathers. It may ruffle some feathers because of the questions for which there are not necessarily readily available answers. And so, if you are an infant in this walk, this may not be for you. Amen and ashe. If you are engaging in brave work, though, then I encourage you to stay on and to journey with us. So, I want to begin by reading the lectionary text. The lectionary text, the lection, the text that was chosen by denominations, by those for whom, by those denominations, leaders of denominations broadly, who desire for the Christian body, the community, and their denominations to read text in unison, so meaning that their churches are all reading the same text, positing a particular message, reading through the text in a year. And so there's year A, there's year C, there's year B, and so forth and so on. And so I don't always, it's rare that I do look at what the lectionary text is, but today I looked at the lectionary text. Well, I was alerted this week what it was, and some people said, what are you going to do with this week's lectionary text in this other group that I'm in? And some folks are like, I'm staying away from it. I'm not even dealing with it because there are other texts. So the lectionary usually consists of several Old Testament texts. So whether one from a prophet, a psalm, some wisdom literature, and then an epistle and a gospel text. Those are usually the readings in the lectionary. And some were saying that they were going to stay away from this text this morning. And so when I went to see what it was, I was like, oh, wow. And so I actually think it's dangerous to stay away from this text. I actually think that it is because we do not engage enough with this text and others in a particular way that gives some the license to have particular views and to inflict harm. So let's go to it. The book of Joshua, chapter 24, verses 1 through 3a, and then verses 14 through 25. The book of Joshua, chapter 24, verses 1 through 3a, and then verses 14 through 25. Listen. Then Joshua gathered all the tribes of Israel to Shechem and summoned the elders, the heads, the judges, and the officers of Israel, and they presented themselves before God. And Joshua said to all the people, "Thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, long ago your ancestors, Terah and his sons Abraham and Nahor, lived beyond the Euphrates and served other gods. And then I took your father Abraham from beyond the river and led him through all the land of Canaan and made his offspring many. Now, therefore, revere the Lord and serve him in sincerity and in faithfulness, and put away the gods that your ancestors served beyond the river and in Egypt, and serve the Lord." Don't click off. Just stay right here, because if you know me, you know that we have to flip this. Now, if you are unwilling to serve the Lord, choose this day whom you will serve, whether the gods of your ancestors served in the region, the river of the gods of the Amorites, in whose land you are living. But as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord. Then the people answered, "Far be it from us that we should forsake the Lord to serve other gods. For it is the Lord our God who brought us and our ancestors up from the land of Egypt and out of the house of slavery, and who did those great signs in our sight. He protected us along all the way that we went and among all the peoples through whom we passed. And the Lord drove out before us all the peoples, the Amorites who lived in the land. Therefore we also serve the Lord, for he is our God." But Joshua said to the people, "You cannot serve the Lord, for he is a holy God, and he is a jealous God, and he will not forgive your transitions." So the Lord made a covenant that day and made statutes and ordinances from them at Shechem. Let me go back up to what I really want to focus on. 24:18, and the Lord drove out before us all the peoples. And the Lord drove out all the peoples. It's the peoples who live there. All of the peoples. And the Lord drove out all the peoples. I have more questions than I do answers. And so it is very important for me then to ground myself as I prepare to invite you to consider my questions. So for some of you, this is our introduction. This is your introduction to me, and as is a cultural custom, when you move into a space or you enter a space, you usually do so by speaking. You introduce yourself. And so it is important for me to name myself. So I self-identify as an African-centered womanist, homiletician. So let me break these words down. Homiletician is one who engages in preaching. Homiletics is the science of preaching. A womanist is a woman of a woman of color, or a black woman or woman of color. A feminist, a black woman feminist of color, is also one whose standpoint is her lived experience. Her lived experience is the primary source of engagement, of doing theology, of crafting methodology, of spouting ideology. That black women's lived experiences are the center. It is the jump off point. It is where one begins God talk, where one's conversation begins. It is a 4-part definition definition given to us by Alice Walker, and this four-part definition condensed into four practical tenets offered to us by Dr. Stacy Floyd Thomas that are recognizable in traditional communalism, redemptive self-love, critical engagement, and radical subjectivity. But for me, to be womanist is also to be Afrocentric and to be Afrofuturist. It is to make as a central starting point and as a viable subject Black and African cultural and spiritual traditions to not only imagine but perform as a living and breathing Black future. Wherein this idea of salvation, this idea of being relieved and or released, lies within Black women's lived experiences and prophetic utterances. Are you all with me? So let me back it up just a little bit. That as a womanist, homiletician, and practical theologian, as an African-centered Afrofuturist, and even I'd add on there Pan-African womanist, homiletician, utilizing both these lenses as a methodology, meaning as the way that I do something, and as an ideological paradigm, meaning how I sift through ideas, how I interpret ideas. This, for me, this lens, it privileges Black bodies as viable agents that assert meaningful agency in the knowledge production process. Walk with me, I'm going to go slow. That an African-centered womanist ideological and methodological framework, I'll say again, contends that Black women must see themselves, that Black folk must see themselves as subjects and not as objects. In a world, this is Malethi Asante, in a world that has often objectified us, that we are to see ourselves as subject and not object, to always consider the history, the current experiences, and the hope of African diasporic people in contrast or in relation to what is being posited by a hegemonic, by a colonial, and imperialist view. Hold on, let me adjust this right quick. An imperialist view. So, along with, as I said, radical subjectivity, which is the ability to name oneself for oneself, to be a self-determining people. That is the being a subject and not an object. Along with redemptive self-love, along with traditional communalism, which is being concerned about the survival of an entire people, right? So one differentiation, I'm getting to the text, but one of the differentiations for Black feminists of color, which Walker identifies as womanist, is that we are not interesting and in obliterating relationships between men and or women. However, we are interested in centering and acknowledging women's experiences as valuable and viable, and in so doing, recognize the balance that is required. Come on, African centeredness. The balance that is required, and in doing so, suggestive that we are concerned not only about the survival of women while we are centering our experiences, but in the belief that when you acknowledge our experiences, that you also acknowledge the entire community. So we are concerned about the survival of the entire community. Are y'all with me? Are y'all with me? Are we together? Are we together? Let me go. I don't see any comments. Let me make sure we're together. We are together. Ashe. So, why have I explained all of that? Because one of the tenets of womanist womanism, womanist thought, is critical engagement. Critical engagement. Yeah. What critical engagement? What critical engagement means in the context of womanism, it refers to the examination then of power structures and social inequalities, particularly those that affect marginalized communities such as Black folk, women of color, and we could continue down through the intersections. So this particular approach then involves a commitment. Are y'all listening? Thank you, Dr. Nicole. Involves a commitment to what? A commitment to challenging and transforming oppressive systems through critical thinking, through activism, through community organizing. Critical engagement then in this way emphasizes the importance of amplifying voices to promote justice. And it also recognizes the intersectionality of oppression and how different forms of oppression, of what Patricia Hill Collins would say, the interlocking systems of oppression, like racism, sexism, classism, how they overlap one another. So now that you understand, or at least you've heard, you may not understand, but at least you've heard me say where my standpoints are, what my positions are. Hopefully you will now get to what I mean when I say I have more questions than answers. Even if you don't quite, maybe you won't get to it, but let me back up a little bit before we go back over to this text, to then help you understand the importance. Well, I've helped you understand the importance or the value of critical engagement. So let me unlock for some of us why we struggle with questioning. We struggle with questioning, or I should say, why we struggle with questioning sacred texts, or why questioning sacred texts can be scary. And questioning sacred texts can be scary for a number of reasons. One has to do with our faith. For many people, sacred texts are the foundation of their faith, and challenging their validity or accuracy can feel like a threat to their beliefs. Two is tradition. Sacred texts are often deeply ingrained in cultural and historical traditions, and questioning them can feel like a rejection of those traditions. Y'all with me? Three, identity. For some people, your identity is strongly tied to your faith, and challenging sacred texts can feel like a threat to your sense of self. And here's the biggest one. Four is fear of the unknown. Sacred texts provide a sense of certainty and security, and questioning them can feel like stepping into the unknown, which can be frightening. So let's go to this text. Stop serving the God of your ancestors. 24:18. Because the Lord has brought you out and is going to drive out all of the people who already, who's going to drive out all of the people who have committed transgressions, against God. It is absolutely necessary that we begin to strongly consider, with this text and any other text, the agenda of the writers. We, those of us who come into this tradition, many of us are born into it because our family members practiced the tradition. And the truth of the matter is, because of our experience with signs and wonders, which are very profound experiences, because of our experiences with signs and wonders, and if we were to tell the truth, if we were really to understand, hey, Dr. Shamel, if we were really to understand that the signs and wonders that we have experienced are not, oh Jesus, I'm about to step into it, ti- are not solely tied to this text that we've been given, more than they are tied to a culture, a tradition, a practice, a oral history, a magic, a folkway, a cultural production that connects us with our indigeneity, that for whom there is no written text that is embodied. That for those of us, and every race and ethnicity has an indigenous beginning, has a beginning of indigeneity, right? Even European. There are tribal Europeans begin also in indigeneity. And so that because we are connected, or because of our experience with signs and wonders and the miraculous, that some of us, and y'all, when I close my eyes, it's because I'm really tuning in and connecting and listening to the receiving the download, that some of us will reject indigenous traditions, but meanwhile, it is that ancestral memory, that line of connection, for which the portal opens for us to experience that it is not as a result of a text or even a belief in a text, more than it is an embodied, mediated action that moves far beyond what is even tangible for us in this realm. Okay. So the text that gets attached to our way of being, the text that gets attached to a belief that at least African people brought with them when they were forced upon these shores, already had in practice in West Africa, and even those for whom in North Africa, where Christianity was indigenous, as a borrowed religion and tradition that borrowed from the indigenous traditions, ancient Kemetic religions of the day. Ashe. When Western imperialism, when Christianity becomes a religion of the imperial state, the empire, as Western Christianity becomes the religion of the state, and for begins to be used in a way to conquer, and when that imperialistic practice that is practiced in a colonial form, that then is used as a tool to be forced upon those enslaved people. The enslaved people don't initially take it in, but use it. We've talked about this before, but use it as a mask. They use it to mask their own practices and their own beliefs to be able to do so just below the nose of those that were oppressing them. And so, even for stories like the Exodus, when enslaved people hear this story about a guide leading the people of Israel leading the Hebrew people out of what the text says that they were experiencing bondage. Enslaved people heard that and in a way internalized that to be able to see that this is like us. Then surely there could be some hope for us. It is the same affinity toward Jesus. That if there is someone who is calling out the empire, someone who is saying that those who are the oppressed of the oppressed have to receive reprieve, then that's something I can identify with. I am simply suggesting right now, or setting this up to suggest that some of us, our ability to be critical, to critically engage, that we traded that for a full out assimilation. And the judgment here is not so much you wrong, you wrong, you wrong, because assimilation for some has been a tool for survival. It has been a tool to get along. It has been a tool to make it, to keep one's head above water. But what I am suggesting that along with simulation becomes a dumbing down. With assimilation becomes one's inability to ask questions. And for black folk across the diaspora, for whom are always under the threat or rule of a colonial imperialistic empire, for black folk here in America, that this questioning we know could get you killed. Yeah, to question the system that has its foot on your neck could very well mean the end of your life. And so many of us grew up hearing that you don't question God. Hence, if you don't question God, then certainly you don't question God's word. But there's that thing right there. It's the God's word part. It is the way in which we have given authority to this one particular text and suggested that it is God's word. It would be like right now me telling you that what I'm saying to you is God's word, instead of saying to you that it is inspired, that it is in my understanding and my interpretive lens of the sacred, of the holy, that through my lived experience, there is an agenda that I have, and that agenda is freedom for all marginalized people broadly, and freedom for black folks specifically, that there is the agenda, that I don't stray from that agenda. It would be like me saying to you that this is it, instead of being honest with you to say that through me, God speaks. And in that speaking, it has to come through my interpretive lens. But I have to be honest with you and tell you that I have an agenda. And what us preachers are not honest about is our agenda. And what we are not courageous enough to do is to tell you that we have more questions than we have answers. We come to you in a space wanting you to believe that we got it all together. We don't come to you from a position of wrestling. We don't come to you from a position of saying, I don't know what this is talking about. We don't come to you saying that you have the full right to question what you're reading, because then we will be put on the margins. Then, come on, we see it. Is this not one of the very reasons that Bishop Carlton Pearson has been marginalized? Because, again, of the download that he received about the theology of inclusion that said that there could be this idea of hell is problematic. Yeah. So it is risky to question. But saints, I want to say to you today that we have to question. We have to ask questions of the construction of God that has been passed to us. And in asking those questions, it is possible that we will see by those who gathered these texts and who formed them in a particular kind of canon will be able to see what their ideal message was for us. What was the reasoning for positioning or for talking about a God in this way that would save one group and obliterate another? What was the reason for positing and or positioning a God that would say to worship the gods of your ancestors is problematic for one group, but for another group, it is their deliverance. Come on, come on, come on. What does it mean for us to sit in these seats and not ask questions? Let's go quickly to the commentary. This commentary is an older commentary, and it is written by Dennis Olson. It was written in 2017, and it appears in the Working Preacher. So I have to, I want to get that. That's who I'm citing here. I'm reading straight from his words so that we can further question. This is what he writes about Joshua 24, 1 through 3a, and 14 through 25. Here, Olson says that God had commissioned the Israelite leader Joshua to accomplish a two-part mission. One is to conquer the Canaanites, and two is to settle the Israelite tribes in the allotted territories. So one, to conquer the people who already lived in this land, and then two, to give the land that was conquered to the Israelite tribes who are, according to the text, the chosen people, the people with whom Yahweh makes a covenant with. The writer here says that in Joshua 24, it is time for this old leader to offer his last words of instruction and the renewal of Israel's covenant commitment to their God before he departs this life. The promise of the land of Canaan. Much had been at stake, he says, in the mission to get Israel settled in Canaan. God's reputation as a promise keeper was on the line. Let's start right there. Some of this, even y'all, I don't even let come out of my mouth because it is risky and or scary. This dismantling of my own foundation. I think about Reverend Naomi Washington Leaphardt's question, do Black Lives Matter to God? Well, the way that we understand God as a promise keeper is often, if we could just tell the truth, hey, God help me today. The way that we understand, we're going to be late heading to the clearing because I'm not going to leave folks hanging on this. The way that we understand God as a promise keeper is often means that in order for a promise to be kept to us, that somebody else doesn't get a promise. That in order for God to make good on God's promise to us, then that means that somebody else has to be obliterated. In order for God to bless us, and this is not explicit, it's implied though, that this is the problem with notions like the way we understand favor. In order for us to be favored, as Jakes popularized it, if favor ain't fair, that God's promises then are only for those who don't worship the gods of their ancestors, but who turn away from their indigeneity and who worship God. And my question is, well, God, what is your problem with indigeneity? My answer is it God that has a problem with indigeneity, or is it those for whom they need this kind of propaganda to posit a particular message to get the masses to believe in a particular way that will support a particular power? So over several centuries, the commentator says, of time, God has promised the land to Abraham. God promises the land that is already inhabited to Abraham. You can find that in Genesis 12. And Isaac, then he promises to Isaac. So listen, he promises it to Abraham. God promises it to Abraham. Then God promises it to Isaac. And then God promises it to Jacob. And then God promises it to Joseph. And then God promises it to Moses. And there had also been a failed attempt by Moses to bring Israel into the land of Canaan 38 years earlier that had ended in disaster. Joshua then had a heavy burden to get it right. So come on, Tamil, you already there. Tamil done gave y'all the end of where we're going. That's good. That's good, Tamil. That's where we're going. God's holy war against Canaan then. God's initial instructions for Joshua's holy war were designed to cleanse Canaan. Let me pin it, Tamil. I'm a pen it just so the people know. Were designed to cleanse Canaan of all non-Israelites and eliminate all temptations to worship other gods. Such words replied over the centuries have had real consequences in the history of God's people that are often tragic and disastrous. These horrific genocidal directives rightfully trouble us. They seem to run contrary to so many other biblical texts in which peace, nonviolence, turning the other cheek, loving enemies, and living peaceably, so forth and so on. The land as a gift. Let me run on. This theme that comes out through Joshua's farewell speech is a recurring reminder to Israel that the conquest of Canaan was never based on Israel's inherent moral or religious superiority over the people of Canaan, but that the Canaanites had lost their land because of centuries of wickedness and injustice against their own people. Well, here it is. I love this commentary. That the idea that for many of us, because we have been ill-taught, and even for those who are members of the body in question, that it is because of some moral and or religious superiority that God chooses to give them the land. This commentator is saying that is not so. This commentator says that it is because of the wickedness of the Canaanites. But I got to run that back even though I said I love this commentary, I have to run it back a little bit more. I'm not a Hebrew Bible scholar to say, how do we know that the Canaanites were wicked? According to whom, whose agenda does it serve? Whose agenda does it serve to posit the Canaanites as wicked? Like, whose agenda did it serve to say that those who were exploring new lands, that when they arrived in the Americas and encountered the native people, that their ways were contrastly problematic to the ways of God and hence needed to be saved? So I am positing then, per Tamil's point, then it cannot for me be the creator God that commands us to forget where we come from. This then makes no sense. Yeah. It makes no sense. I then, given the intersections that I live on, have to question the propaganda behind the notion that God is either on one hand, no respecter of persons, but then on the other hand, not interested in folk engaging their own ancestral memory, and or two, is a respecter of persons and chooses who gets to live and who gets to die. Friends, that construction of God don't work for me. Yes, Dr. Jamie. Yes. That it allows us then to continue our unethical pursuits by deeming folks wicked, and then it becomes our justification. Now, I hope that you are picking up what I'm putting down without me fully saying what I'm putting down. I am hoping that you are able to make connections of just how problematic this construction of God that we are given is, in that it then justifies for us, per Dr. Jamie, certain kinds of pursuits. It also justifies that it is okay then for entire communities to be obliterated under the guise that they are morally inferior or religiously inferior to the chosen of which God has chosen. And as such, the land that they live on, the land that has been theirs for generations throughout generations, that this God then deems another people more worthy than them, and then gives them the unction to be able to occupy, to gentrify, so forth and so on, the land because, quote, they are wicked. I'm telling you, I got more questions than I have answers. And actually, the truth of the matter is, I actually have answers. And the answer is that it is imperative for us to interrogate the text. Jamie, that book is sitting right here on my desk. It is imperative for us to interrogate, right? It is imperative for us, imperative for us to interrogate the text. And here's how I want to relieve you. I want to then relieve you from the fear of a sense of uncertainty, from the fear of security, of not having security, that this kind of questioning for you may bring about. And I want to contend, now I'm going to make a jump over to the New Testament here. In the parable of blessed are those who hunger and thirst after what is right, for they are the ones that will see God. That a tool for hungering and for thirsting might very well be questioning. If what we are seeing in the world does not cause us to question not God, but the construction of God. Hear what I'm saying? I'm saying the construction of God is what is faulty. Jesus. Hey, my goodness. I am saying the construction is faulty. Oh my goodness, Dr. Shamel. These are exactly the questions I have been asking God, which pulled me away from pursuing ministry. But I am feeling a call again, at least to learn. This was my first lesson. Ashe. The invitation is open. Ashe. The invitation is open. Yeah. that we are called to ask questions, y'all. And particularly for those of us who are in ministry. Good morning, Dr. Pastor Wilson Brown. For those of us who are in ministry and who do preach and who do have guidance and leaderships over flocks and congregations, I want to encourage you to be transparent and honest with those who journey with you. I want to encourage you to interrogate the text. I want to let you know that it is okay sometimes to preach against the text, to ask the questions. It is okay. You are not going to be stricken down as we used to be worried about when I was younger and hearing. And even I remember my husband talks about how in Sunday school, he was invited to leave Sunday school, aka kicked out, because the Sunday school teacher was not brave enough to answer his questions. She wasn't brave enough to say, son, I don't know. She wasn't really brave enough. And it was her fear of the unknown. It was her fear. And so instead, she thought it easier to silence him. And that is often what happens in our spaces of faith. We find it easier to silence folk who have questions, and even trying to silence our own inner critic, our own question. But what if that is the path? What if this questioning, it is a part of the path of righteousness, of just for us to question, what does it mean for God to kick out indigenous people from a land that they'd always lived on because of wickedness? What is wickedness here? What is described as wickedness? Because let me tell you what the danger is about this. When the colonizers colonized when the colonizers captured us, when they attempted to observe what we were doing in our traditional and indigenous habitats, because they didn't know what they were viewing, they named it wicked. Because they didn't understand the religious and spiritual and cultural practices, because they didn't even understand geographically and the climate of the way that we dressed, and the way that we hunted, and the way that we called forth the divine, because they didn't have a name for it, they named it wicked. And here we are, still believing that cultural representations of an expansive God are problematic. Here we are, not brave. Here we are, sitting in churches and other spaces of worship, choked, unable to ask questions, playing games about names colonizers gave our traditions, like witchcraft. Read Teresa Washington's text, Our Mothers, where she talks about, let me see if I can, let me see if I might have to do it over in the clearing. I'm gonna take it over to the clearing. I'm gonna pull that quote for us. And so ultimately, friends, again, for those of you all, oh my, who want to join us in the clearing, you can just click that link, Ashe. Click that link and then just hit me in a direct message, and let me know that you've joined, and I will send you the link to come and join us. More questions. I want you to be comfortable in asking your questions. I want you to rest in not having the answer. Ashe, I'm going to lift up my sis, Shamel Bell, who says, please pray for me. I have a PhD already. Indeed, she does, from UCLA. and whose work is around performance studies, embodiment. I met Shamel. Let me just say a brief word. I met Shamel via social media. There was a viral video of her celebrating the conference of her degree with her son, and she crip walked across the stage, and I just had to inbox her. But our first meeting face to face, we met each other on the holy ground of our ancestral home on the continent of Africa, in South Africa, and where she led a panel, and then we had the ability to listen to the sage wisdom of Angela Davis. So Shamel, this community, PRC, lifts you up. And I am today, Shamel, going to inbox you this link. I'm going to inbox you the link. To the clearing today. I'm going to gift you this link today, given where you are and what you're experiencing, so that you can come over and join us, so that we can talk back to this text and engage you in a way that is helpful. Ashe. So y'all, yes. So I just inboxed it to you, Shamel. And as soon as I end this live, go ahead and click the link that I just sent you on Facebook Messenger and come on over so we can talk back to this text. Y'all, I just simply want to say, yes, Dr. Anika, that I am learning to live in the tension of unknown, and that is a great way for us, is that we have to live in, well, no, wait. That's not it. That's not what I want to say. It's not that I'm learning to live in the tension of the unknown. I am learning to rest in the assurance of what I know, that is based on my lived experience, that is based on the ancestral memory that pulses through me, that tells me that there is nothing wicked about the practices of my ancestors, Ashe. That there is nothing wicked about the practices of my ancestors, nothing at all. And that allows me to then question, Ashe, to question the agenda of those who canonize a text, who put text together to put forth a particular message that would lift one people up and put so many other people down. That as a result, that even hundreds and thousands of years later, here we are in the middle of a world crisis as a result of an ancient agenda being carried out by a modern government. It's okay for you to question. I release you. I release you from that fear. And I saw somebody said here that I think it was Kathleen, that they serve a God who is mature enough, who is big enough, who is great enough to answer questions and to hold them. And yes, Dr. Sims, that reading the text as an act of subversion. That's it, y'all. We're headed on over to the clearing now. We will see y'all next week. God willing, Ashe, and the Creek Tone